So, hi, Marcus. One question. What is head crushing? Yeah. Why the name?
What is head?
Yeah, why the name head crushing?
I think everybody who is in programming knows this situation when it's late at night and your code gets worse and worse and you start crashing with your head on your keyboard.
Oh, okay. Okay.
That's why I choose this name for my blog.
So it means, if I would read your blog, this could happen with me. Or is it your blog the remedy for head crashing?
Both.
Both, okay. Nice. And
if you read my blog too long, then it will happen indeed, yes.
Okay. So you also mentioned that you are an author, so you wrote some books?
Actually, not books. I wrote for some magazines like
Java Magazine?
Let me think. Java Magazine, right? And IX and Heise.
Mm-hmm.
And currently I have a frequent column in the German JAX own club magazine called Java Aktuell.
Java Aktuell, okay. And what topics? So what topics are you covering?
Well, everything what have to do with Java in general, but in the recent publications, it's mostly about JAX-RS, RESTful programming, Jakarta, and all that.
Okay. So, and what you also mentioned is that the last time, our last podcast, that you started in one point of time to talk about on conferences and write blogs. The question is why you started with that. So, or why you became a speaker.
Why did I become a speaker? I think there are several reasons for that. One reason is that I was attending the first or second JAX conference, and I thought, cool, being a speaker is cool. And then it needed many years. And another reason is that back in high school, I had fun writing, and my teacher was asking me if I like to become a journalist. And so this is something that's inside of me that I want to give information to people, and directly showing it in front of the audience is way more cool and flexible than writing just a text and waiting half a year until it gets printed. So I somehow I got into that, and yes, it's just fun and I like doing it.
Okay. So you attended the second JAX, so I think it was in the near Frankfurt. It was called Mörfelden back then. And
Right.
And when you became when was your first speaking gig?
Oh yeah, I actually can't remember the exact year, but I think it was about 2010 or something like that.
So it took you 8 years.
Yeah.
Similar story here. So I was at year 2000 at Java 1, and I saw the speakers. Oh wow, one time I would really like to speak. And I started to submit, I think, 3 years later. And the first talk which was accepted was in 2007. So it took me 7 years until something got accepted, actually.
Yeah. So you know the reason. It's not that you don't want to do that or don't dare to do that, but you have to get accepted. And this is a process you have to stay behind. Write proposals again and again and again, and someday you are lucky. Yeah. And it took 8 years for me. So yeah.
So next thing, what interests me is, so you started to work with JAX-RS, but what were your first contributions? So so we had a brief discussion with the client-side caching, but what were areas you were interested in JAX-RS? Because so as we covered, you are using JAX-RS in your company, so it's not like you would like to improve the world, rather than you have concrete requirements. So which requirements you had and what you achieved in JAX-RS, or what were your idea and so forth?
Okay, you actually asked for the first contribution in JAX-RS, so I have to think about that.
Or one of the first, what you were interested in. So exactly.
Yeah, it had to do with extending JAX-RS, because back then I was writing a WebDAV extension, so I wanted to do WebDAV on top of JAX-RS, independent of the actual implementation. So it shouldn't be a Jersey specific thing. And there were some limitations in JAX-RS 1.0, and I extended the JAX-RS API to get rid of that limitations, to be able to have more flexibility in writing extensions. I think that was actually the first contribution I actually did on my own.
So
everything.
The provider annotation was your idea?
No, not the provider annotation, but there are several interfaces. Let me think. I think in the area of the status, if I remember correctly, they were hard coded as a class, and I reworked it into an interface, I think, but I'm not pretty sure. It's too long ago, actually.
Okay. So you wanted to have to implement WebDAV as an extension for stock JAX-RS, and then something was lacking, and you tried to extend the specification to make it possible, right?
Right. Actually, I was asked to provide such a proposal by Mark Hatley. Back then, he was the specification lead, and he was very friendly and inclusive. He actually gave me the freedom to invent a feature, and I discussed with him, and it was finally accepted. It was a pretty cool experience, actually.
And most of the spec leads are actually nice. I mean, in the Java ecosystem, I would say almost everyone is nice. Almost, I think, because there are probably exceptions, but as far as I know, everyone I know is nice. It's really hard to find someone who is really strange, right? So, I mean, if I remember, I never had rarely. It's just like, and I got on my blog, someone wrote, he came from somewhere else, and he asked questions, and I said, this Java is an amazing community because they're mostly friendly people who answered his questions, and I thought, why not? I mean, what should we do? We cannot just go away or whatever. I mean, it's just normal way of. Yeah. Interesting.
You think it is normal, but actually, I have to tell two things about that being friendly. Certainly, you're right. We all are friendly people, but there's a second level where we are not so friendly. This is when it comes to money, right? So behind the scenes, there are discussions where things are not that friendly, actually. And the other thing is, why are people telling us the Java people are so friendly? My wife told me all the Java people are so friendly. Why is that? I don't know why it's that, but I can tell you that there are other people in the IT business. For example, if you're looking into the area of graphic design software, they are not friendly at all. And if you are used to those people, then you really think the Java people are very, very friendly. So this is a special thing of the Java people. They actually are friendly. That's right.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing could be people we know they're already attending conferences and they are somehow more open. But these people, they know a little bit of history. We have we like to talk about James Gosling, Scott McNeely, Sun Microsystems, and the Duke. And this is nice history. And I think this is why we are not that serious, or however it's called. So whenever I was once in China, in Beijing, and back then it was organized by Oracle, and Oracle told me you have to be careful. So if you they won't ask you any questions because it's complete different culture, and this was the opposite. I got so many questions that I couldn't complete the session, and we had exactly the same discussion as in Europe, about Duke and whatever, and this was for me no difference. And the one funny thing in China is I asked the developers about something kung fu or whatever, and they say we don't care about kung fu and all the crap. We have no time. You spend all the time programming. That was
that's funny because this year I'm again providing the session about Javaland kung fu.
Oh,
in the Javaland conference.
Okay.
For Java programmers, actually.
Okay. No, but I asked them about the real kung fu, and the thinking and whatever, and they say, we don't care. We have no time for that. So nice. Okay, so your first thing was extensions, and then you became the one of the spec leads immediately, or
No.
Okay.
I'm not a spec lead. Actually, everybody thinks that because I'm doing a lot of work, but I'm actually not a spec lead.
I thought you were a spec lead.
No. No.
So why are we talking then? We should cancel right now.
No, actually, the spec leads were Oracle people always, because they wanted to stay in control of everything, which is clear. They have investments in all that, and they want to be the one who give the main line where everything has to go. But I'm a committer to JAX-RS, which means I have full powers at the Eclipse Foundation to do with JAX-RS whatever a committer can do.
Okay.
There is no spec lead anymore in that direction since we moved to the Eclipse Foundation, because they have a different governance model. So we have it's called project lead, and it has more to do with looking after all the rules. So he has no special powers.
So let's go quickly through that. So what I understood is there is a E4J project. So more or less you can do whatever you like there. There is like spec project, which is the API for the E4J. And if you are a committer, you get you can be elected as a project lead, and you get one seat and a special powers. Or I could buy this by being advisory board or something like this, right? So I had already the chat. So I can also become a sponsor and buy a seat, right? This is also possible.
Well, that's a pretty complicated discussion.
I thought now is the discussion over. I clarified everything.
No, it's just starting at that point.
Oh man!
The actual story. The actual story is the Eclipse Foundation wants to tell everybody that being a committer is the greatest thing you can do, because you get elected as a project lead and you can have a seat in the steering committee and all that. But actually, the number of seats is not balanced. So the ones buying their seats are much more people. So you have to accept in the Eclipse Foundation that the large companies like IBM, Oracle, Siemens, or something, they always will be the ones who give the direction because they give the money. As a committer, you only have a small chance of influencing everything in the political direction. A committer in the Eclipse Foundation has all the powers on the source code level. So as a spec committer, I have a veto right in JAX-RS. I can prevent bad things to happen, and I can force good things to happen. But I have no political powers in the Eclipse Foundation.
But you could get a seat, right?
No, not me personally. All committers vote one guy for one seat in that committee.
Yeah. So
all committers from all projects, from all specs.
So we have one project lead which was voted by all committers, and he has to fight against all the people with money, right? Or work with them.
Not only him. You need to understand that from all the specs, not just JAX-RS, there are 20 or 40 different specs in the Jakarta EE workspace. From all these projects, from all these committers, from all these project leads, only one single person is elected.
Oh, this is what I completely misunderstood. I thought per spec one person.
No.
So we have to talk with Tanya and with the others then. So this interests me. So the next conference I will approach them, because this was my misunderstanding. I thought per spec one. But still, if there is one implementation E4J and there is a steering committee for JAX-RS, right?
Yeah. Right.
And who is in the steering committee from JAX-RS?
The steering committee is not for JAX-RS. The steering committee is for Jakarta EE. And JAX-RS is governed by the committers.
So that means one Jakarta EE committee governs everything.
The Jakarta EE committee governs everything which deals with generic spec issues, like legal issues, for example.
This is like what was exactly the same at Sun and Oracle time. There was the Java EE spec, which is like umbrella specification.
Yes.
But then we got the API and SPI division. What interests me right now is, so we have Jakarta EE like umbrella spec, but we also have JAX-RS API and SPI, right?
We don't have a JAX-RS SPI actually. The specification we are providing is only about the API, and what we had back in the JCP, which was the reference implementation, Jersey. This is completely discoupled.
Yeah, right. So because we can have multiple.
To do,
yeah, exactly. We have multiple implementations, right?
It has no special role. Jersey is just like CXF or REST-EC. So they write their own product and they apply for being certified by us. So we just give a certification. But Jersey has no special powers or special relationship to us anymore.
This is what I forgot. So actually the JAX-RS project, so the Jakarta RESTful Services project, it only comprises API, and the SPIs, the reference implementations, they can come and go. So there could be multiples, or are actually multiple multiple compatible implementations. Then it makes sense because we have the umbrella Jakarta E, and then we have just the JAX-RS and the others API. So it is not that different that it was before, except RI reference implementation is out of scope.
Yeah, the problem is in JCP times. Oracle did both. They provided the JAX-RS, they provided Java EE, they provided Glassfish, they provided Jersey. It was all in one big repository. And when they gave the code to the Eclipse Foundation, we had to split it up. We had to make a difference horizontally and vertically. There's a difference between the specs and the implementations, the products. And there's a difference between JAX-RS and Jakarta. And it's not completely done. There are still small interconnections. We fight about how to resolve them. And this is the boring part of being in the spec business. You have to solve all that interconnections so everything is cleanly separated and will still work.
Okay, you like the way it is right now?
No.
What you don't like?
Actually, I don't like that with money you can buy influence. That's one point I really dislike at the Eclipse Foundation. I understand why they did it, but it's not something I like.
Yeah, but the question is what they do with the money, right? If they contribute the money back, then it's okay. But if they, I don't know, buy a ivory tower for the Eclipse for Tanya, and what's the name of the guy? Then it's different. But
actually, what they do with the money is first they have infrastructure they have to run 24/7. People don't know this, but they have their complete infrastructure with lots of servers. And the second thing is they have a staff of lawyers and the president and all that. So there are people providing legal insurance, you could say, for us. And this is really expensive.
But important. So if someone will use APIs, it's really important, the lawyer stuff. So in code reviews, I get asked, which, for instance, is okay, to include such license or distribute such external library with our code. I tell my clients, I have no idea. Ask your lawyers. I have a basic feeling, but I'm not a lawyer. Exactly.
Yeah, and this is completely resolved for us. So we have a system at Eclipse Foundation. I just type in the name of the dependency I want to pull in, and there are lawyers. They're checking exactly the source code. They really read the source code, and they tell us exactly, yes, you may do it. It's not problem at all. Or they say, please don't do that.
Okay.
And if you have to pay that with your own money, you wouldn't do that.
Yeah,
it's really, really expensive.
So I mean, but we have basically no solution. So I also don't like the idea that someone can buy seats, but I don't see any other solution, right? What you can do.
Well, the different solution would be like the Pesci. They have a best effort. So they try to do their best without money, and the outcome is dubious. Maybe they are right and you may do what you did. Maybe they are wrong and you're screwed, right? So,
but I think in this time with Oracle, with the spec, I think it's better that everything is more organized with Eclipse. I would say, this whole Jakarta E namespace and
it was a bit chaotic first, but it's pretty well organized now. The problem is that the people don't know how it is organized. So still there are lots of people just doing their thing, and you have to catch them and tell them the rules. And there are particularly from the big vendors, because they were not used to open source. They were not used to develop in the open. And it's sometimes hard to convince them not to just hack in their ideas and get it pushed through, but discuss with users, discuss with volunteers like me to find a solution which is not just usable for them, but actually a benefit for all the end users.
Yeah.
And this slows down the process, and it's sometimes it makes you angry to have all that arguments. But in the end, it's the best for everybody, because we want to have stability for a long time, and we want to have a specification. We don't just want to have one product. We want to have a specification like a law, where everybody can read and understand and follow. And this is what some people hate about the Eclipse Foundation's way to do things, because it has a lot to do with laws and with justice, and we have many discussions about what is the right way to do it in the Eclipse Foundation. And people don't see that. This is all behind the scenes mostly.
Okay. So I thought, my genius summary how Eclipse works would, conclude the discussion about politics and organization, but it was not completely right, my understanding how it works. So we clarify that. So what was your next contribution idea? So I'm curious, what was your, area of action in JAX-RS? So first there were the extensions solved, so you could deploy WebDAV. Yeah. Then what was your next goal?
Yeah, I had it's more an abstract goal, actually. I had the goal to influence the next versions of JAX-RS to be more usable for users, because you have to understand what it was working back then. There was Oracle doing their thing, and they agreed that others may vote about the end result, mostly.
But about Oracle, it sounds like Oracle, but the truth is mostly they were old. They were former Sun employees and programmers who just happened to be now Oracle employees, and most of them were brilliant. So I was in all these specs, and I was the laziest spec lead ever, because if I read what they wrote, I say, of course, sure, I could reformat the text or whatever, but this is actually already brilliant. And this was a little bit the problem, right? That they were really good people, and good, I mean, not like geniuses, but they were programmers, pragmatic programmers who exactly knew what to do.
Yes, that's true. But on the other hand, they only had their own view.
Yeah,
right.
This is true. So, in particular, what you didn't like, what in particular, annotation or whatever, what you had to improve to make it more usable, just to give me an impression.
The point is that if you only work as a vendor, you try to use your own API, rename it as JAX-RS, and give it to the world.
Okay.
So, sure. If you have used different application servers before, then you notice the API could be different to be more easy to the end user.
Okay.
And this is what I try to influence.
But what
yeah.
you influence in concrete? So what you saw which could be improved? Give me an example. Do you have something?
It's a long ago. I don't know the details.
Okay.
It was about parameter names. It was about function names.
Okay.
It was about the way how to pass parameters and all that. It was a lot of small things I tried to improve. It was the text phrases in the spec, for example.
Okay.
The examples to make them more concise and all that.
So I'm completely with you. So I also for me it's very important to know what the names are, and because it has to be readable and it has to be intuitive. So if you look at this, you should immediately grasp what's going on. Exactly.
Yeah, right. Right. And when we were moving to the Eclipse Foundation, then I had a chance to actively provide features. That was really great because I had access to the source code of the specification before it gets discussed. And so I started to actually write my own code and made proposals to complete extensions of the API, which ended in, for example, the Java SE Bootstrap API, which was my own complete invention. Cool. And I gave it for discussion, and we had a real open discussion with all the vendors, with the users. It was really great. It took months, and it was completely completely reworked. So it was not my thing anymore, but it was a community thing then. And this was a cool experience to see that the community is able to provide a large set of new interfaces from scratch within months. That was really cool.
Yeah, but what I assume what you did, you already tried everything out in your company, right? So you did the Java SE Bootstrap and it worked. So and then you just took the source code and cleaned it up and
yeah, right.
This is how it works.
That's mostly it. Yeah,
I'm really curious. I think it is impossible. Also, for me, it would be hardly possible to write a spec without code, right?
Right.
And
you must be a genius. Yes.
or it just you did it multiple times. Let's say you do JAX-RS and then you do Apache RS and then you do Linux RS and then okay, there the fourth time you already exactly know what happens, right? But this is what never happens in our industry because no one will implement the same thing twice.
Yeah, sure. I actually I implemented this particular feature 3 times. To see what is the best way for a generic interface. So we are pretty sure that it's useful now and it provides benefit. If I would just go to a whiteboard and think over what could be a cool API, that's of no use at all. It wouldn't work. Yeah. After 5 minutes of actual using it, you would see flaws. And you could throw it away. You must always write code and test things out and model it. I always tell my colleagues, model your code. Don't just think one solution and code that, but model it like you would be a sculptor. And in the end, you will find an interface naturally. It would be looking good and feel good to use that interface, and it must come out of actual code.
Absolutely right. Yeah. So then I'm curious about a complete different topic. So sometimes I get questions, what's my opinion about contract first? So that we, let's say, write the REST thing in, let's say, YAML, JSON, and some kind of specification, and then generate code. So what's your opinion about that?
I hate that.
Yeah. Yeah. This thing has problems on multiple levels. So recently, this was last week, someone asked me this. It's okay, let's say we managed to generate the code. And what we do with the code? Do the code belong to us or to the spec? If the code belongs to us, then it's fine. But if we say, what happens if we regenerate, we have to regenerate the code, then everything breaks. And what usually happens in real-world projects, and real-world project means there are several more or less crazy architects and poor developers, and the architects say, okay, this code doesn't belong to us, and then they have to map, so they have a mappers which maps the generated code to the actual code, and this is done hell on earth. So I say, okay, what you are actually doing? We can come back to SOAP. So we already generated everything in SOAP, and now we are supposed to do the same in JAX-RS. Yeah. I'm happy that you are with me here. So
there's a small story about that. I can remember when I was at college, and we were taught that in future. I need to say this was 1993, right? In future, there is no more work for coders because if you have a system where you can give the interface in a formal language, then the computer will write a perfect code for you automatically. And meanwhile, I think the world should give up that idea. We already have crazy fast computers. We have deep learning. We have artificial intelligence. We have templating systems. We have automatic tests. We have all that. But still, the best code is written by a cool coder. So I think there will ever be people that think contract first is a good idea, but in the real world, it's just not working. Actually, I have never seen that working.
Yeah. The same with me, I have to say. So I'm glad that, because I'm a consultant. I'm working more or less alone. I mean, I'm working in teams, but since I'm a freelancer, it's not like I have a team of people. I can, they're traveling with me. So I'm traveling alone to the clients and then with team. And so I also never saw that working. And I was just curious whether someone had really good experience with that. And what I can imagine is if you have a kind of spec which is enforced by law or is already it was already designed by several companies, then you can of course take the spec and generate the code because the spec is set in stone. So whether it is good or bad, you have to use it. But regarding the perfect interface, I think it is doable. But what I think what will happen is if we would design the perfect interface and then computer will execute that, it would be much more expensive than implement, the bottom-up approach, than implement the code first and end up having the spec. And we implemented everything by ourselves. This would be less expensive than spend all the time for the perfect interface and then do the computer the work to do.
Sure, that's what I think. And the question also is, what is the perfect interface? Because everything lives in a context, right?
Yeah.
So if context changes, and context will always be changing because the world is expanding. So tomorrow it wouldn't be the perfect interface anymore, and you have to start from scratch. Yeah. So it's much easier to just model your code, take the code as it is, and if the context changes, then change your code.
Yeah, and if you think about such an interface with metadata and everything, so it could, or it probably will work. Such a thing would work like a generator, because the computer will have to interpret the interface or generate bytecode or do something with it, and if a small thing in the interface changes, it could the whole implementation of the interface could be completely different. So probably you couldn't even oversee the impact if you had such a thing. So therefore, right. It is way easier to have a lot of cycles behind the interface and hide the implementation, and then at the end of the day expose the interface. So this interesting discussion actually. And what interests me right now, why you wanted to have the Java SE Bootstrap code for JAX-RS?
Well, it's pretty simple. There are different implementations of JAX-RS. For example, Jersey JAX or CXF and REST-EC. And we wrote code using the native Java SE Bootstrap from Jersey. And we wanted to try out another runtime engine. So we wanted to get rid of Jersey, actually. Not because it's bad, but we wanted to see if there's a better implementation. And we noticed that the others also have similar bootstraps, but with completely different API.
So you use the client, or we use the client, right? The client.
No, no. We used a few classes of Jersey.
Okay. But why? I mean, usually the use case would be the server boots, the Jersey and how, or the JAX-RS implementation. But what the server does, I don't care. I'm not server implementer.
That's right. But we don't want to have a server. Actually, we want to have really small boilerplate services.
Mm-hmm.
So we had experiments with Payara, for example, and Payara Micro, and this was far too much code we don't want to have. So
why not? But I mean, if you start, in 3 seconds and it's small enough, who cares? Okay. What was your problem? So where it runs on the machines, or what? What you are building? How many services do you have in a company?
We intend to have several hundreds in the end. Currently, currently we have one big service doing lots of things, and we want to split it down in really microscopic services.
Okay.
And we don't want to have boot times of 10 seconds. We intend to have boot times below 1 second, for example. And we don't want to have hundreds of megabytes of jars just for doing a microscopic thing, right?
Why you would like to have hundreds of microscopic services? This is what I usually don't like to have. So why? What is beneficial in your case? So
the benefit is we have a real huge application.
Yeah.
Which is very, very old, and it's huge, right? And it has interconnections at points where you never expected them.
Yeah.
So we had an idea to split it down in these microscopic services to have a clear view what is the needed interconnection between the services. So we build everything from scratch currently to define exactly what service is providing which information and consuming which information.
So your motivation is monitoring and how data flows, so auditing, so you can see what the services are doing and how they communicate with each other, right?
Right.
Okay, but several hundred.
And
still
there's yes. Well, the software was built in 25 years, so you collect a lot of things.
Okay, 10 services per year, 1 service a month in 25 years, and we have 250 services. So
right, that's the point.
Not that crazy. Have you looked at Helidone or Quarkus?
Crazy. Yes, we looked at that. This was invented, I think, 2 or 3 years after our own research.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting, but it goes in a direction we don't like.
Mm-hmm.
We want to do pure Java. We want to do standards, and they start again with building their own proprietary thing. Like Red Hat is providing a Red Hat thing. It's not really an open standard. Sure, it's an open source project. You can contribute, but it's not a standard. And if you have to service your applications for decades, which is what we do. Actually, we have customers with service contracts running for 20 years. Mm-hmm. We want to do the smallest possible denominator, which is always a standard.
I'm with you. So the Quarkus, the problem with Quarkus is, or your problem with Quarkus would be, you don't actually see the main method. But in Helidon, you could actually create your own main method and then boot whatever you like, and you can actually boot the JAX-RS service. So this is less coupling, I would say, for your case, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. Helidon shares a lot of ideas and technology with what we do, with the small difference that we did it first.
Okay. and Helidon copied your effort,
No, I don't know. I know Dmitry since several years, and maybe I talked too often about the idea of the Java SE Bootstrap. I don't know. In the end, it's more or less the same what we are doing.
Mm-hmm.
That's
but
right.
I'm with you. So I'm actually absolutely with you because my personal opinion is, if you start something serious, look first what Java SE gives you. So if this is not enough, I would expand. I'm expanding to Jakarta E and Java E. But in your case, if you have one app and this is a product, so every vendor dependence is actually dangerous for you. If you can afford, and you just you have a dependency on, let's say, on OpenJDK, then it's the best possible position because you get the productivity from Java and the stability, and everything else is optional. So you can swap the implementations and nothing can happen to you. So I absolutely get your strategic vision, because it's exactly what I'm telling my clients, except in my world, my clients don't run usually such products. We have more projects, so the dependency on Quarkus, Helidon, or Payara is just fine.
Yeah, sure. Our company is a bit special in that point because we have that long-running service contracts, which leads to different thinking. We have teams that actually decide against open source because they say it's even better if you write this library on your own.
Yeah.
So I'm the crazy guy because I convince my colleagues to trust on different companies because all my colleagues only trust our own company.
Yeah, so. This is not that special. I remember I was in a project around 2003 to 2004, and I worked with software. This was Java software they built for power plants, and they say we have to control the entire stack. So if something breaks, we should be able to fix that. Exactly what you said. And they say we could do open source or we can implement everything. And they actually implemented prior Java everything in C. So they had everything implemented by their own, from database to whatever you can imagine. And so we slowly we started with JBoss back then. But there was one guy in the company who full time just cared about the JBoss. So if something broke, he was able to fix it. So I think this is what completely is lacking in projects I see. They just pick the latest stuff you write in Java magazine, so it's your fault, or IX or Heise. They just copy everything over and then go to a project and say, after us, I don't care. And then the dependencies get forgotten. Yeah. They often disappeared even from the internet, and then the clients are stuck with software which is no more operational.
Yeah, right. That is what we experience too, and that's why our company has two ways to go. The first way is write everything on your own, and the second way is if we use open source, and we use open source a lot, then we must be committers, or at least be able to influence the committers.
And so probably make also the software buildable in-house, right? So what I assume, whatever you are depending on, you are checking out the source and build it in-house. You're perfect.
Yes, we're building in-house only the most essential parts. We build in-house Johnson, Jersey, Eclipse Link, and a few of that libraries. Mm-hmm. But in the other libraries, we try to be influencers, so we know what's happening in future with that libraries. Yeah. So, for example, we are using JCommander, which is a small library, and we are in contact with the main authors to understand what their target directions are.
Yeah, perfect. So I'm really glad we talk about that. So I have now a reference, as a podcast reference I can point to. Because people also always say to me, you are crazy that, about your dependencies, because I don't like any dependencies. You have just pick, standard first. And you are even worse in this because for me, it's not a problem to be depending on Quarkus because, if someone like it, they can pay Red Hat and this is good for me. So they Helidon, they can pay Oracle. This is also a solution, to pay, but there should be one solution. So, and just, downloading something from the internet, patching that, and hoping that it works is not the best strategy. So interesting, because now we see that your JAX-RS commitment was actually laser focused on maintainability in your own company, and not like you want did just to improve the Java EE world, which could seem from outside, right?
Well, it was both. Actually, I always try to improve the world, make it a little better.
But you wouldn't just commit to JAX-RS without having the use case in your company, right?
No. Actually, if I wouldn't have the use case in the company, I wouldn't be in JAX-RS at all.
Yeah.
So why should I do that? Actually?
Yeah, I mean, no. There are contributors who like technology to just do it.
Yeah, that's right. But there is far more interesting technology, like drone flying, for example.
You see, I for me, JAX-RS is more interesting than drone flying. So
have you ever tried drone flying?
Yeah, but they do everything. I mean, this is like driving, RC car. So they just do whatever you say.
Right.
And
I did it this morning. It's so relaxing, and when you come back from drone flying, you are full of power for coding.
Okay. So after the show, I will probably go out and try some loopings.
Don't try loopings with your drone.
Cool. So now I'm curious about the client-side caching. So I remember the discussion. Mm-hmm. So why you wanted to have a client-side caching then?
This is because particular reason of our main application. We have huge amounts of data which we have to transfer frequently.
Okay.
And this data changes very seldom.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not nice that you forward megabytes of XML files again and again and again and again. So what we wanted to have is to do it like a browser. If a browser does a GET request, he looks in his local cache, mm-hmm. and if he sees the information isn't stale, then the application can do that. And we wanted to have this in JAX-RS. Mm-hmm. Actually, we don't have it until today.
Yeah.
It's a shame because our customers complain about the performance of the clients, and caching would be the solution. So
client-side
it's
caching,
still,
right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, client-side caching, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's still on our roadmap, actually.
So what was your idea? So you contribute to the Java SE, you're the extensions, client-side caching. What else? So what were things you were interested in?
Isn't that enough?
Yeah, sure. I'm just curious. I have now the unique opportunity, to save time and ask you what you actually did with JAX-RS.
No, I did actually. I did more things, small things, and there is a roadmap actually on the internet where we collect our ideas since long time. Mm-hmm. And what my personal interest is for the future is making it smaller and more modular. Because often you don't need the client or the server side. So mm-hmm. I want to have this separated. Mm-hmm. And another thing is that I want to push it into the future in two directions. The first direction is use modern Java technology because we still are on JDK 8 at the mm-hmm. moment. And mm-hmm. I want to have fluent APIs, for example. Mm-hmm. And on the other hand, I want to change the direction. The direction of JAX-RS in the past always was be a generic API for application servers, and I want to turn it into a generic API for services, which is something different, because you can do cloud services these days, and cloud services work a bit different. By the way, I'm giving a talk about that next week in Göttingen at a university about Java and Kubernetes. And this is something we do not cover at all currently in JAX-RS.
You mean you would like to consume cloud events or something like this, or what?
The idea is to look what special constraints and features clouds provide. We have never collected this, and we think there are use cases where you could support programming Java in, for example, in Kubernetes, mm-hmm. In JAX-RS by having, for example, new annotations or new interfaces. And this is something I look forward to.
Give me a concrete example. Which annotations, for instance, in Kubernetes? So what?
One example could be what the micro profile people did. Kubernetes is able to do health checks.
So liveness and readiness, right? Liveness, readiness, something like this?
and startup requests. And there's nothing to support this in JAX-RS. You can do it by hand.
I got you.
But
So what you mean is that, like, the Kubernetes can interact with the pods using HTTP.
Right.
So, and you could standardize the HTTP communication using annotations, right?
For example, yes. This is what was proposed by microprofile people, but it is not part of JAX-RS specification yet.
No, it's microprofile health, for instance, right?
Right. Right. So there are topics that are still not covered by the specification, and I want to look into that and help making JAX-RS more cloud citizen.
And what I'm thinking right now is Jakarta Jakarta E9 will come soon. Which features will JAX-RS provide? Are there any new features? So in JAX-RS we can expect?
Actually, there are new features in JAX-RS. We hope you will see going public this year, but it will not be in Jakarta EE9 in particular, because the steering committee decided that the Jakarta EE9 earthquake will be strong enough already.
Okay.
What means that? In Jakarta EE8, we had exactly the same than Java EE8. It was completely compatible. When going to Jakarta EE9, we have to rename all interfaces because we must not use the word Java X. And all package starts with Java X. So we have to rename everything. And if you want to run your existing application, you have to rework it. You have to look, for example, in configuration files, where is the package name Java X used, and have to replace it by Jakarta.
By the way, is Big Bang, was it a good idea or not so?
It was a brilliant idea because it's a lot of work.
Perfect. I'm with you. Just go ahead with the renaming. So Jakarta. So I just wanted to say yes or no, but big is perfect. It's also my opinion. And
so you have to do a lot of work, and we expect that people hate us for that already. And if we start to do more things,
why do you think so? Because they have to migrate the application?
Yeah, because
I think this is brilliant, because I think now in the microservice world, lots of projects are starting. The old project can keep doing, the Java E8 stuff, and new microservices can be implemented with Jakarta E9. And from my perspective, it is much clearer than we just say, okay, whatever comes after Jakarta then go with that. And this is a much clearer than a mix of Jakarta and Java X or microprofile, right?
Yeah, sure. But I think it's related to the fact that the big vendors have to service the existing applications. Yeah. I assume.
Yeah, but they have support contracts, they get money, so I mean, it's a business, right?
Right.
In Angular world, they have to change, 3 times a year the application, and everyone loves that. I mean,
with Angular, you start from scratch every half year.
yeah, semantic versioning is how it feels, and everyone says, okay, Angular is perfect.
Yeah, I think there are influencing people that simply don't like the idea of doing it again. I think so. So it was decided by the steering committee that there shouldn't be too much additional changes in Java EE9.
So but which features will come in Jakarta EE10 then?
In Jakarta EE10, then we have several features from that. I know one in particular which is really, really cool and long in the queue, which is the Java SE Bootstrap API.
Okay.
I wrote it 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And since then it's laying in a branch in Git in GitHub, and I'm doing talks with exactly the same slides for years now, and people always are asking, when can I do that? And I always tell them it needs half a year. Yeah. So
but this is
Jakarta
brilliant.
E10, this will be there.
They can reuse your talks, and you can save a lot of time. Imagine now you commit your extension then you have to rewrite the entire talk, right?
I have to do small changes to my talk, but actually you're right. I just use the same slides. Let me check one thing. I have a roadmap. I think we can publish that link to the roadmap.
Yeah.
And from that roadmap, you can see not just Jakarta EE10, but also the next ones.
Mm-hmm.
And on that roadmap, besides the really brilliant JavaScript Bootstrap API, we have, for example...
Hey, one second. Please don't mention in your talk that you developed the Java SE to deploy hundreds of microscopic microservices. Because what happens then, people will attend, or my developers will attend your talk, come back and try, to introduce millions of microservices with Java SE Bootstrap algorithm, and everything goes south, People laugh at the microscopic services. I was at Java user group somewhere, and someone asked me, how I start these services. It's like, what do you mean, how start a Docker Compose? Yeah, but we have hundreds of services. And I say, okay. And how big is your team? I say, 3 developers. And what are you building? Just a project. What does the project do? And it says, yeah, they just money conversion, from converting, from US dollars to euros. It's like, okay, but it's not that complicated. No. It's like, why you have so many microservices? They say, because we need them. We are microservice architecture. We need the microservices. And then I ask, and all the microservices, are they somehow isolated? It's like, no, we always release everything at once. I was okay. I would question the architecture, and he was completely pissed off then, because what I'm propagating is monolithic architectures, and they thought everything through. The only problem is to start the entire application, because they have to start multiple hundreds microservices. Yeah, this was the short discussion what I had, and you started again, with the microservices. So I was curious, what was your idea behind?
Not everybody is forced to do that just because I did that. Okay?
Yeah, but people listening, this is the problem with Netflix. They go to Netflix and they say, "Hey, we need historics." They build in everything historics, and then it dies, right? So
if your tool is the hammer, then you nail everything.
Yeah. So you always provide context. So in my project, I have to tell you, it is hard to find project with more than 10 microservices, because if you are in a business project, so my microservice is more like, subsystem. It's not like microscopic. It's more, it makes sense from business point of view, right? Like payment. Yeah. And this works great. But having smaller microservices, then I get you. So if you have, the complete knowledge about the applications, 20, 25 years of experience, you can properly do it. But I think this is absolutely undoable in normal project, I would say.
Certainly. It simply is the reflection of the decades.
Yeah.
So we know exactly what is a service and where is the demarcation line to the next one.
Okay.
But you asked about the roadmap.
And, sorry.
We have 3 minutes to go. So
now we have a lot of time. There's no meeting in your case right now, right?
I have no meeting, but I thought your audience gets bored someday.
I don't care about the audience. No, if my guest is interesting, so we can a little bit go longer than this, right? So
yeah, sure, great. So it's Saturday evening. I have lots of time. There's more in the queue for JAX-RS. We, for example, want to replace our own dependency injection framework that we invented for JAX-RS 1.0. We want to replace it by CDI.
Yeah, this add context is no more there, right?
It's still there at the moment.
Yeah,
we want to get rid of that.
Yeah,
and people are happy to hear that, but it will be a lot of work. So I cannot tell you when exactly this will come, but it definitely will be the next in the queue after Jakarta EE10. And then we have in the queue support for JPMS modules and for Java 9 Plus features and for the Flow API. And we queued one thing again and again, which is support for NIO API to improve the performance of the application. And everything besides that is up to proposals by users.
And JPMS, how exactly you would like the Java Platform Module System? How exactly?
Right.
What is the idea to support that? So what is to do exactly?
Yeah. The idea actually is that somebody comes to us and tells us what he wants.
Okay, yeah, exactly. Because
The experts just had the idea that to better modularize the API. At the moment, you just have the idea split client and server, but maybe we could modularize more, and I hope that somebody comes with a brilliant idea what the modules should look like. So we just have the buzzword written in our roadmap, but no clear idea of that.
Yeah, because I mean, what I could imagine is like someone implements a module, and this module, if you find the module, it could be visible as a resource. Like I know, one-to-one binding between path and a module, like more like business, something like this. But anything else, I mean, I have no idea what to do.
Yeah, there is a reason why we came to the modules. If you look at Jersey, for example, how Jersey is implemented, Jersey actually is not a product; it's a framework. You have lots of dependencies you need to pull in, and these dependencies provide a magic. This magic comes from an auto scan mechanism built in Jersey, and we bring this magic into JAX-RS in Jakarta E10, so you can write auto magic feature inclusion. And so with JPMS, what we could do, for example, is provide modules which enable new JAX-RS features. Example, in the past we had support for JSON and we had support for XML. And this was hard-coded into JAX-RS. And with JPMS support, we could make it optional. So you could strip your application down to the lowest level. So you have a very small JAX-RS core. And if you think you need support for XML, whatever, you enable a JAX-RS module. And by enabling this, it pulls the implementation of Jersey, for example. So actually, the smaller you want to think in the end, you have to provide more and more modules on the API level to allow the implementation to strip stuff.
Yeah. So that's
like
the
core idea.
The more isolated version of a provided interface, right? Because now the extension mechanism is more or less with the provider, and what you could do, you could hide the provider in a module, and
yeah, sure, you could do that. We didn't actually think about the provider interface. We had another interface for that, but that's details. Yeah, in essence, yes.
In essence, yes. Okay, interesting. So, but this is not like groundbreaking. It's more like clean and stuff, except the Java SE booting man is because it's really nice to have that. And what I use a lot, I would like to tell you what I do, how I test JAX-RS applications, and you can tell me whether it's a good idea or not. What I'm using basically is so we have a microservice with JAX-RS that exposes REST HTTP services, and they have another module. It's called ST for system tests, and within this module, I'm just using let's say Jersey. Or REST easy, but in my unit tests, I'm using, of course, the JAX-RS client. So client build a new client. I get back the client, then the next method is .target. So I get the web target and then using from testing. And the idea being is, so this is basically black box test, and there are no shared dependencies between both. So I'm forced, first to consider my own interface from outside. So more or less like almost test driven. And I can detect breaking changes, because if my service evolves, my system test has also to evolve. And what I can do, I can just check out all the system tests and see whether the recent microservice works with all the system tests. And now comes the cool thing, what I also can do. If another team would like to consume my microservice, I just gave them my system test, and they just delete the asserts, and they have working client, right? So what do you think about that?
Well, the problem is, first of all, I have the same problem.
Okay.
But the point about JAX-RS is we have to be careful what we want to make out of that. JAX-RS started as, let's say, a thin layer above products. So to support your use case, we need to make a framework out of it.
No, it already works right now. I use it right now. There's nothing else to do, so I'm happy. I just wanted to present what I'm doing with my client.
Oh, I thought you want to get some kind of generic support to better improve that.
No, I'm perfectly happy. It's just
I see.
I just wanted to explain you what I'm doing with my system tests, and because you are working also as a real developer, not just ivory tower JAX-RS developer. I want to share my
I see. Okay. But what did I want to say?
So the question is, you will end up having several hundreds microservices. Yeah. So my opinion is unit tests and integration tests are nice, but black box tests are essentials because no one cares. I mean, no one cares whether your service works inside. I would like to see whether it's operational from outside, and this is why I start with system tests, right?
Yeah, right. What I envision, I have always to make a difference because what I envision is not what we have today. So actually, we have too few tests currently, particularly black box tests. Mm-hmm. What I envision is that we have standardized support for contract based service tests. I wouldn't say it's a black box test. It's more outside of that, because with black box testing you think about Java based testing, and if we talk about services, I like to have something on the Kubernetes level. So we start a test container in Kubernetes and actually test the real running service, because we need to test not only Java. And I don't have that today. This is what I'm doing
as well. So I have a Jenkins pipeline which builds the system. So this is actually usually OpenShift in larger companies, which is Kubernetes flavor, but it is well supported Jenkins pipeline, and we have unit tests, integration tests. Yeah. And then we build the Docker container or pod, and then it boots. We wait until readiness and liveness probes are green, and then the second module, the system test module, is executed, and it tests the first module. This is what I talk about actually.
Yeah, right. And the poor, or for one people is poor, for the other is good. The poor point is, this has nothing to do with Java, right? So
it does. You know why? Because most of my projects are Java projects, and I can reuse the system test as a client, right?
Sure. But what I think is we need to find a standardized way to provide this test mechanism to Kubernetes. So it's not something that you build in particular. So you can have some standard support for these kind of tests built into Kubernetes, just like you have Helm as a standard packaging for applications in Kubernetes. You could have something that packages Java services and Java tests, so you don't have to do it manually. That's what I what you could do with Kubernetes. I don't have that.
We could have liveness probe, readiness probe, and a functional probe, and the functional probe would be a set of interfaces which have to run to assure this could So, and this could be interesting, right? Okay.
Yeah. So, but again, I don't have that. It's just a vision that I share.
No, this is like your vision, this is you spoke as a JAX-RS visionary. I was more curious about your company. what you're doing in your company.
Okay, what my company does is pretty simple. We're using a curl to test whether it works. We don't write real tests. I would love to have some.
Yeah,
but
and instead of curl, I use the JAX-RS client.
Yeah, right. I understand that, and I would love to have that too, but my colleagues are lazy. They don't write it.
Oh, okay.
The problem with our code is if you are in a business for 25 years and you know your domain so well, you know there are parts you don't have to test because if they break, nothing's lost.
Yeah.
So you test very, very small set of use cases, and you know for sure how often people are using that use case. So if you do few tests manually, you have covered already 80% of customers.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what makes them lazy. It's not that they're lazy by birth. So it's just their knowledge that they know we have lots of code that we don't need to test anymore. That they just either you let them break because nothing is lost, or you know if I do this few times, then it will not happen at runtime.
Cool.
So we have very, very few tests that we really need to automate. This is the difference to project business. You're into project business, you write new code. Mm-hmm. So you don't know what happens, so you need lots of tests, and then must be automatic. And we're in the reverse situation. We have running this application on, let's say, 10,000 workstations for 25 years, so we pretty much know what is stable and what is not. So we don't have this pressure for tests.
Yeah, but you cannot show me, the how it is called, the Sonar metric, code coverage 80%, green one.
Oh, I cannot show you this coverage, but I know the coverage we have is about 1%.
What I did once,
so it's really.
I recorded a video how to improve the code coverage by changing the CSS. You know what I started I started Sonar, then open developer tools, and of course you can change the metric just by manipulating the DOM, right? And I did this just for fun, and then submitted the screencast, and then was curious what happens, and almost like an April Fool, screencast, and someone pinged me then and say it works great, but the problem is if they close the browser or hit the refresh button, the metric changes back, to the wrong number. And I said this was just a joke, because why I did it, because there are some projects my clients really love, the numbers. They say, okay, we would like to have 80% code coverage for unit tests, and they completely forget, the curl tests. And I say, okay, if you just need the statistics, so we can do it easier than invoking all the getters and setters without asserts, right? Now, switching the topics, very, very. What is your idea about OData? You know OData?
Yeah, no OData.
What's your opinion?
Well, I think there are use cases where OData is really good, but I personally don't like doing software that style. I love more doing interfaces where it's cleanly designed what happens behind the fence. Mm-hmm. So I give a use case and the server executes that use case. Mm-hmm. I'm not a big friend of things like Excel, okay, where you say there's huge data, do what you want. Yeah. This has a history in our company where people completely crashed their application by doing big data analysis on a live information.
This happens frequently everywhere, I have to say. Select star from somewhere and everything stops.
Right. And that's why I don't like interfaces which are such generic that you ask a server to do just something. It doesn't know why you do it. Yeah. You cannot optimize it. You cannot prevent failures. Mm-hmm. So I understand why people do that, but I personally don't like that.
Yeah, there was a use case recently, and I took a look at the OData, and it is RESTful. I don't like how it feels. So there's lots of
Yeah.
dollar signs. I don't like this, but it is better than if someone has, if a developer with 9 to 5 developer would just implement a CRUD interface to a database. So I see stuff like they delete with post, or I don't know, they update with get. And this OData at least is more explicit what happens behind the scenes, and you can know filters and queries out of the box. And what's your opinion of GraphQL? This is like OData, very similar to OData. Have you a chance to look at that?
I have not tried it out personally. I understood the idea, and I understand that there are use cases where it comes really useful if you support that. Mm-hmm. But it plays in the same direction. So I unless I really need it, I wouldn't do that actually.
Yeah, this is also my opinion.
I think it's risky. It's simply risky to let a machine do user queries and you have no clue why the user wants to pull all that data together and compute something out of that. I understand that there are use cases where it's really useful.
Yeah, there's difference. The OData would expose database more or less generically, and the GraphQL, you would write a front-end service, and would this front-end service would understand, the queries, and the queries have to be resolved against our beautiful REST services. This is how GraphQL would work, and the problem with GraphQL, of course, is you will have to implement additional service, and this is perfect in larger projects. In my projects, I mean, it is harder to implement because you will probably need a team who cares just about the GraphQL service, right?
These generic things, they always have the smell of SQL somehow, and I often think I have two hearts in my chest. One heart is the REST heart, right?
Yeah.
So you know your domain and you provide exactly use cases as access methods, and the other heart, this why I started with IBM machines in the 90s, right? And you used to do SQL a lot. And I actually like SQL. It's a real cool thing what you can do. You have real power for complex analysis, and I have not found a way to combine these hearts. So
what you can do, what you could do, just imagine that. Yeah. So you say you have you like to what I understood is you like to expose business logic, which was modeled, with true code, and it just models what, in best case, almost like a DSL, is what your business department thinks about the business logic. So 1-to-1. But what you could also do, you could use JAX-RS and expose, resources which don't model the business, but could model, for instance, Java methods. So from my perspective, if I do something like get methods and I get array of methods back, or get queries and I get all the queries back, is also RESTful, but the context is different. So I'm not exposing, I would say, my business department logic. I'm exposing my runtime, right? And this is also, from the RESTful perspective, absolutely okay.
Yeah, sure, it's okay. But the question is whether it's beneficial for your target. And that's why I say I think every technology has a context in which it's the best or at least a good solution, and there's always a context where it's useless. For our business, we are better off with the domain modeled RESTful entities, and we just have not the driver for the other thing.
Yeah. I would say in all my projects so far, the explicit business driven is easier to maintain over the years, because you see what happens in the backend. Yeah. But the problem are often queries. So you have the hard stuff which makes up your core domain logic, and then you have collateral stuff like CRUD services, master data management, who actually no one cares. And for this particular cases, you could just be more generic.
Yeah, sure. Actually, there are a few customers of us asking things like, can we access your database using Excel? And well, they can do, and we let them do. And in future they will come and need a RESTful interface for that, certainly. And it would be a possible solution. But this is less than 1%
Yes.
of access to our data, actually. So we know in the back of our heads that there are solutions. If people come and want to do that, we will support them in like GraphQL or something. But from our own roadmap, we have no plans to provide that without a customer paying for that.
Yeah, sure. I was just curious about your opinion, and my experience is very, very similar. So perfect. So we cover lots of ground. I would like to invite you back.
Yeah, sure.
By the way, about friendliness. You Java people are friendly, and the first time we talked to each other via my podcast, I don't think we met in person in conference or somewhere. No, right?
Let me think.
I don't think so.
Well, we both were at JAX, but I don't think we knew each other. But maybe we have met, but we didn't recognize.
One of the reasons why I invite you is because my impression from all the, what I read, because what I also remember is once I wrote a generic JCA connector, and you said, okay, connectors are nice, and you try to do something with the JCA connectors. And then from the JAX-RS mailing list, you were impression was you were aggressive. So you wanted, to have the client container, and you went, you had a goal, and you tried to reach that. So this was aggressive. And I was really curious how you actually are, and you are not aggressive at all. You're actually a nice guy. But the impression from the mailing list and everything else is hey, the Markus Karg is like, he destroys everything. So this was my my opinion of you, and this is one proof. So the whole communication via email and Twitter is actually not suitable at all to have a conversation. So because you always get completely wrong impression, right?
It depends. It depends. First thing is that aggression has two meanings. It's not only being a bad person.
No.
Certainly there are bad persons. It also has a positive meaning of clearly following a line.
This is what I meant.
Like if you say I do aggressive optimization algorithm, right? So in the latter meaning, I am aggressive. I try to push API changes into a useful direction very aggressively, and I really dislike destroying good ideas by talking too much about it.
Yes.
So particularly in the open source world, there often come people you never heard of, and they provide completely useful information in a very complex discussion, and the complete discussion is screwed by that. I don't want to blame particular people. I have names in my mind, but this happens very often. So I try to be aggressive there to force the discussion in the right direction again.
Yes.
But but personally, I have no problem with anybody. So
no, it's a cool observation, right? So my impression now is completely different than before the podcast. So
yeah, but what you said is true. You often have the problem that topics are not suitable for text-based discussion.
Yes,
because you need two attributes. The first attribute is you must be able to calm down, to really understand what the sender wanted to say, not what he actually wrote.
Yeah.
And the second is you must be fluent enough to actually write what you want to say. So if you miss one of these attributes, the end result is a very bad discussion.
Yeah.
And only few people have both of these attributes.
And the problem I had with the whole JCP mailing list back then is too long emails. So there were people who wrote, one pager, and I couldn't just. I wanted to contribute something, but I got a daily, 50 emails, and I just couldn't read everything. And I said, if I don't read everything, I cannot contribute back because I don't understand the context. And I would say, if I were the spec lead, I would restrict the communication to like 3-liners. I mean, this is possible. If you know the context, we can say today, client caching yes, no, or whatever, but you don't have to explain, the entire history. And this is the problem I had with the mailing list back then. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The problem exactly was the complexity of the topic and the cluelessness of some of the readers. So you had to explain to them some basics of the topic, and you couldn't do that in few lines. Mm-hmm. So either way, they will be pissed off, right? Yeah. If you write a lengthy mail, they are pissed off because it's way too long. Mm-hmm. If you write a very concise mail, they're pissed off because they think you don't want to really explain them the topic. And this is what gets wrong in many discussions, particularly if there is a huge gap between the ones having lots of expertise and the ones having only low expertise.
Yeah, as you answered me before as you asked me before the show, do we have to prepare? Yeah. And when we met, so my answer was like, no preparation. It will work. Here is the invitation. And then I thought about this. I was actually completely rude how I answered to you because you don't know me, and I just say yes, no, and have fun in one day. But this is one of the problems, right? And if I will answer, half a page and you have no time to read, it's even worse, right?
Yeah, and actually, when I read the invitation, I was curious how it will work out, and it was really fun to do it.
Because no preparation, nothing, right? Just
no. I was totally unprepared, and you ask silly questions and I give silly answers. But it's really fun. It's really fun.
Yeah, and I think it should be as fun. So because if you had to prepare, I don't like it's no more honest, So if you prepare a question in advance,
true. That's really
and
true.
re-ask again, I mean, this is no fun at all.
Yeah, I once interviewed a few people and had exactly the expression that the fact that they knew the questions upfront in written form was the cause why the result was not really the truth. Mm-hmm. Because they have too much time to think what they want to tell you.
Yeah.
Not what they know, but what they want to share. Mm-hmm. So it's a good idea to just start recording and ask questions, and if the outcome is too crappy, then you can cut it out.
Yeah, I have no time for cutting. So except if there is a silence, so I cut the silence because it's really easy to identify in my diagram. But I don't put anything else. It would take years. So I thank you a lot for the conversation. So now I know you a little bit better, and I would like to invite you back. In half a year, 1 year, or whatever.
Yeah, why not? And maybe we meet on a conference. Who knows?
I will at least try to find you now because I know you better. And now how will you do? Yeah. And so where people can find you? So headcrashing.what?
If you want to read my blog, mm-hmm. you can find it on headcrashing.wordpress.com. Mm-hmm. And if you're interested in live presentations, I'm frequent speaker at the JavaLand in March. Mm-hmm. And in summer, it's Java Forum Stuttgart, and in autumn, it's always the Eclipse Con Europe.
Oh,
so
cool.
if you look for the programs, I'm always in there.
Yeah, thank you then.
Yeah, thank you too.